Hey there, Goa fans. This is Mark, DJ Solitaire here with episode 86 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which I share in every episode one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. We are still in that 80s. I'm going even far too retro here. Uh, and in the 96 to 97 season. I do remember the 80s as well, before some of you were born. Uh, so that 96 to 97 season, I mean, we're spending a lot of time on this particular season because there's just so much music coming out and being developed. And this track that I'm featuring today comes from an album which I was really surprised to just find out was only released in early 98. I'm assuming early. Discogs only said 1998. And that really surprised me because I absolutely know that I heard it and got my hands on this particular track from the album well before that. And I remember hearing it at a summer solstice party in 1997. Was a little bit of a snafu situation. There was a group of us who were going to play just a gathering of friends and play in the forest. And then somebody found out about it and took over and got Joti and Dino and all of these, great folks to play. And I remember Roger Ram was there and we're dancing in the forest and talking about our DNA being readjusted and all of that. And but I was supposed to play and I didn't. And this great friend over there, a great Greek DJ Harry, he was supposed to play, didn't. Only Richard Purple, who had been booked, he got a whole hour squeezed in between. But basically, somebody just hijacked our party and got all these people on. So that was kind of interesting. But I remember Dino playing a whole lot of this sound and this track, which, the opening track on this album became really like the clarion call of a whole other kind of sound. And so this is Oforia. I was really shocked to learn this was released in 98 because I remember this hitting and I remember being like just wow, because this is a whole other style. So Dino had worked with Ofer Dikovsky, who's the musician behind Euphoria, on Freaky. And so not sure if that's how, the introduction to Dragonfly came out because, they'd released a Freaky single and one of the tracks was on the second Order Ordinata. Yeah, it was the second. Maybe there was one on the third as well, but in any case. So I just remember this sound. And what I do remember as well, I'm just going to, lots of caveats because I absolutely love this. But I remember Dino played a lot of it. And with any sound, I think there's certain elements that communicate in a certain way in certain harmonic pieces. And too much of a good thing could be too much of a good thing. And I think in particular, I'll be highlighting when we listen to the opening track, Maximiser, really well named. Um, I'll point out some of the harmonic things that are happening. And I've heard this happen before with some other artists. Certain styles and sort of sounds from Ethnica Pleiadians and others, like you have to manage the harmonic packaging and flow really well. Because I think too much of a certain key in certain intervals, I think can push you a little too far. I mean, there is definitely, it's part of the goal of this music, I think, and these events to take your consciousness where it hasn't been. I also think that I consider a bit of a responsibility to manage the flow of some of these intervals well. So I will usually, just personally, based on my experience and how I encountered some of these sounds, really work with, there's only going to be so much of this kind of interval because it really is powerful, incredibly powerful. I absolutely love this track. It was really interesting coming back to it after quite a while and sort of just remembering the incredible sound and the incredible impact that it had. there is something absolutely unique in terms of the synth sounds, the harmonic language, and so on. And you know, Ofer plays there's a range of styles, absolutely. So you know, he's not like locked into just this one particular sound. It's one of the things I really appreciate about him as an artist. But this track when it hit, I remember it hit. So why don't we get started with the first track from the Oforia Delirious album on Dragonfly. Um, Delirious, what a great name. Maximiser. Here we go. So this aerated pitch melting is already going to have quite an effect if you play the full introduction. Really cool. Bit of a psychedelic, you know, aerated melt. So that rhythm, really powerful. And just, you know, like I've named before, this kind of Morse code message. And I love the bounce of it. This climbing effect, but it's also, it's not just climbing. I mean, it's really going, you know, in. It's really, really powerful shift with the filtering there. Really just goes up there and then fades, but then it comes back down. Very clear message with the bass line. Love that pew. And then that octave leap, which would go back to the Infinity Project Stimuli. That was kind of one of the really key elements they introduced there. Super uplifting so far, right? Right, so it's got a very triumphant nature. And this is where we're going to hear, you know, where the great musicians back then were creating lots of different simultaneous moods and emotions. Now there's this kind of sense of something, some foreboding, something is coming. That climbing voice again. So like, what is going on here harmonically? There's a devil's tritone. So you have a minor second, but it goes up to a diminished fourth, which is, this is the interval that the church banned. Okay, so there's this real tension, right? It's a very unusual interval, and this is the key signature of this track. Now it gets doubled up. Right, so it's fascinating because it's exploring, you know, a musical interval that religious leaders actually banned. And it's celebratory, but also introspective, right? So the rhythm adds to the celebration, but then there's that darker element to these notes. There's just nothing like it at the time, and they're incredibly impactful on the dance floor and with headphones. Another round. Right, so you get this hypnotic thing. I was like losing track of like how many more rounds there are. I think it breaks on the next one. And we get back into some of that aerated noise. The way that kick comes in. The stories. Nobody's making stories like this right now. Wow. How do you blend it to have this uplifting energy with this really unusual harmonic language? It's quite a feat. Parallel shift down a note or two. dominant key. There's some of those other, there's the duplication on another other instrumentation. And we're back. And then it moves up again, and then so some parallel shifts there, not quite sort of classical level modulation, but just a side shift that really shifts. And then again, a creative break, right? Brings back that bass line element, and listen to that noodling up there. This circular pattern that just bores a hole in your brain. I love the climb, and then it breaks at the top. There's that one that's climbing up and another one coming down. Now it actually goes up to the perfect fifth, so that diminished fourth goes up that one note to the more, right, acceptable perfect fifth. So that's really key, because all of a sudden, like, this breaking through from that tension into the more uplifting perfect interval. Interesting lead into the modulation. Let me take that up again. It's not doing the perfect fifth in this modulated version. So we're back into just the diminished fourth here, not with that uplifting change that took place. And then the outro begins, incredible chimes with that descent. It ends as it began, except for one little shift that comes after the last bass line thing here. Holy. So you can imagine, I mean, really, when this hit, you know, on the dance floors in '97, it was not, there was nothing like it. You know, it was a completely unique sound. And that harmonic framework, right, of that diminished fourth. It's in a really unusual key. It seems to be in A flat, which is an awkward one. Lots of black notes in there. And so it's that A flat that then goes up to the D natural instead of to the E flat. So, I mean, technically, if you're writing it, it's going to be an E double flat. So to be diminished, but anyway, very unusual, right? Minor second and diminished fourth. So really, like, you know, these combinations of notes that unlock certain emotions and patterns, right? And when they're arranged in a story, you know, in each track, and this is the rich thing about our scene, right? Each track is already complete. You don't need to be doing effects or mixing in other things or whatever. It's already a story, and then you make a larger story. And it's just, you know, I'm editorializing here. It's just my personal thought that if you're playing a lot of Devil's Tritone and some other, you know, certain intensity with music, that includes the level of darkness, the level of uplifting, and so on. I don't want too much of the same thing of any kind, because there's that whole flow that takes you on that journey instead of like you're feeling the same mood all the time. It's not what life is like. So, having, again, what I've named before, this blend of seemingly contradictory emotions, right? Simultaneously, uplifting and introspective and a little bit dark and kind of broody. It's definitely a broodiness to that diminished fourth. Um, just all of these simultaneously. And then the way it breaks up just in that section where it sort of finally triumphantly breaks through to that perfect fifth interval. Um, Absolute magic. So hats off, Ofer, for a masterpiece that it was very distinctive for me. This really captures the sound of part of what I was going through in the summer of of '97, and initially a really mixed reaction because it was like, what is this? This is completely different. And then when I heard this by itself, not in that set that I thought was just like, ooh, this is getting a little bit intense. I was like, okay, this is quite a gem. So I definitely played it out at some point back then. Probably when I played my only London party, like official party, was December '97 with Laughing Buddha and I forget who else, some other local fellas, and probably played it out then. And I would have played it in Japan a bit the following year. I haven't played it in a while, and it was actually my short list for when I was in Goa, but didn't make it into the final set, and it's going to have to soon. So I will sign off here from episode 86 of Retro Goa Explorations and then leave you with the complete track. I'm Mark TJ Solitaire, leaving you now with the iconic and groundbreaking track by Oforia, Maximiser.